ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו. Our ancestors were going through the deserts for 40 years, from the time that they left Egypt until they arrived to the promised land. Now, a desert is a place where there are oases. From time to time, you find a place where you can rest, where there's a tree or something, a little water, but most of the time there's nothing. How did our ancestors feed themselves during all these years? How did they survive? Well, the Bible teaches us that God made man, it's in Hebrew, manna in English. Manna came down from heaven every night. In the morning they got up and there was food in front of their homes. So they took that and that's what they ate. But there was a condition. That manna had only a shelf life of 24 hours. You couldn't keep it for another day. You had to consume it on the same day. The following day it became rotten. You couldn't use it anymore, except for Fridays. Because on the Sabbath, there was no manna from heaven. On Friday, there was a double portion in front of every home. So everybody took the manna in, and they used it also for the Sabbath. This is why in a Jewish home, at the traditional meal of Friday night and the Sabbath, there are 2 loaves of bread, because there was a double portion of manna that came down from heaven while they were in the desert. Yet, the Bible says that our ancestors complained. They didn't like this manna from heaven. They called it lechem hakelokel. The word kilokel doesn't appear again in the Bible, so we really don't know exactly what it means. It's a hateful bread. They didn't like it. One of our interpreters says, since there are no vowels in the Hebrew language, in the written Hebrew language, maybe it means hakalkal, the very easy bread. It was an easy bread. So what was wrong with that? You didn't have to work for it. Well, for a moment, let's think of the following. You know, according to Jewish law, before you eat anything, you have to recite a blessing. You thank God for what He gave you, because sustenance somehow comes from nature. And if you eat a fruit, it doesn't matter which fruit, a fruit that grows on a tree, there's a certain blessing, the fruit of the tree. But when it comes to bread, there's a special blessing. Why is there a special blessing for bread? Our rabbis say, because bread is a composite type of food. You know, you take a grain, wheat, you separate the kernel from the external covering. You have to make flour out of it. You have to make a mass out of it. Afterwards, you have to bake it. You have to do many things. There's several steps, elaboration, before you can eat a piece of bread. So man feels he's a partner. He is doing something. He realizes that it all comes from God, but he is also a partner to it. In the case of the manna that came from heaven, there were no partners. God gave you the food, and maybe they rebelled against that. They didn't want to be dependent on God, to thank God, because without Him, you can't have food. And man didn't intervene. You know, man feels he has to do something. Then you feel satisfied. You feel you're somebody. But when something is given to you and you have no effort in it, maybe you don't like that. Or maybe there was something else also. You know, just like God gave you manna today, He may decide tomorrow not to give it to you anymore. What will you do then? Don't you realize that you are really dependent upon God for everything? And man who thinks of himself that he's very important, he has freedom of choice, he can do things, he can think, he can speak, he can build, suddenly he is dependent upon God. And in essence, this is the dilemma of the religious person. On the one hand, he's doing things. On the other hand, he realizes that everything somehow ultimately depends upon God. So how can you live in this dichotomy in this world? Well, it is something that isn't resolved really. On the one hand, you must make every effort. You must do, you must build. But on the other hand, you realize that there is a superpower. There's an all-powerful God that really determines the destiny of humanity. So what the religious person has to do maybe is leave to God what is in His province. God will decide according to His parameters. But your purpose in this world is to be an ethical person, a moral person, to live by the commandments of the Bible, by being a devoted father, by being a responsible family member, by being a responsible member of society. This is your duty in this world. Leave God's decisions to God, and in the end, you'll be a very happy person.